Hi there, I'm Amy Ellis from amyscreativeside.com, and today I want to talk with you about my thread selection process. When we're quilting, we're often led to believe, taught, that the best thread option is the one that blends. And 9 times out of 10, this is completely true and accurate and what we are going to do because it's what's best for the quilt. But what about when it's not clear what is going to blend best, or you want to add a little something more? So I want to show you some of my examples of quilts and help you with the process as we talk through these quilts. This first one that I have in front of me is called Tipsy Triangles, and it's a fun quilt with a lot of different color to it. And at first glance, the 3 thread options on the quilt top, you would probably go with the dark gray because it blends over the top of the background. But I was not excited about this option because it felt kind of heavy and not as playful as the actual quilt itself. This is improv piece triangles on the corner of squares, and they make random shapes. It's a playful quilt. I didn't want to kind of weigh it down with more gray. So I started looking at options, and you can see that it doesn't blend over the top of everything else, but I was happy with the pink in the end because it was the color that I wanted to highlight the most. And if you're looking to a quilt that has a lot of different colors and you're not sure exactly which way to go, selecting one that you want to focus on more than all the others is a really great way to kind of hone your decision. In the end, obviously the pink won, and I put that on top of my quilt. And I really liked the playfulness that it added and the texture that it gave the quilt. And you can see it from a distance, it's not just up close. So it's a fun one. That's one option, focus on color, right? This quilt is called Quill, and you can see there's a large area of negative space on the right side of the quilt. And a lot of times, you know, in the past even, I would have just automatically gone with the cream thread that blends over the top of everything equally. It's just fine. In all honesty, I had left this quilt unquilted for a couple of years because I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to quilt it. I wasn't inspired by what I had done in the past and I wanted to try something different. In the end, I went with the aqua thread that blended over the majority of the pieced units, but then also added a lot of great texture to the negative space. And this is something that it can easily be achieved with a thread color that it mostly blends with the cream. I mean, it stands out from the cream a little bit, but it doesn't overpower it. There's a lot that you can do while honoring the colors in the quilt without using only the one color that is most universally used. This next quilt's called Experimentations, and it's an improv quilt that I worked on over the course of a few months. Improv doesn't come naturally to me, so it was something that I kind of had to build up the courage for. So this quilt, it's all black and white. There is no other color to it. And I wanted to honor that, but at the same time add a little more interest. So after I went through with a silver thread the first time, that pretty much looks white here, I went back and I added some more color or not color, more thread choices. So just some deeper grays that would blend but also add interest as someone got closer to the quilt. This definitely is not a loud and boisterous exception to the rules, but it does add a layer of texture to this quilt that I think is interesting and I really appreciate. Sometimes just pushing it a little bit beyond what you're comfortable with is also a good thing. This last quilt is called the Comfort Quilt, and it is a variation of the quilt that I made for my book Modern Heritage Quilts. And I really had fun making this one. There's a lot happening with all the variety of scraps, the low volume backgrounds that mix in, and the cream would have blended over all of those options and all those different things really well. It just felt boring. And I wanted it to be a little more playful, because it is playful with all these little blocks and fun scraps that I got to use in the quilt. So I decided to start experimenting with other color, and this quilt, the palette was all hot colors. So I was looking at the yellows and the pinks and the reds, trying to decide what worked best for me. In the end, obviously, I went with this marigold color because it was kind of in the middle of the entire warm spectrum that I was using in my quilt. It blends over the top of all the different colors, but it's also not completely disappearing, which I like. Sometimes it pays to push the envelope a little bit more and see what can become. I have been collecting thread for a while now, and I also have a thread color card that helps me kind of make decisions when I am in the midst of the process without buying an entire spool of thread or cone of thread before I make my decision. So check with your favorite thread company and see if they have a color card. Usually they're available for purchase for an inexpensive amount. It's just a good way to kind of explore and experiment without a huge investment. If you want to connect with me more, I'm available at So Modern Quilts on YouTube or amyscreativeside.com. I look forward to stitching with you soon.